Good evening, and welcome to this program at the Bangalore International Centre on urban landscapes, the interplay of festivals, audiences, and city dynamics. This session is presented by Art Mantram and the Glass House Festival of Poetry. Urban landscapes across India have witnessed a surge in cultural festivals, particularly within the realms of literature and poetry. Last year alone, over 60 literary events unfolded across the nation, prompting inquiry into the driving forces behind this cultural renaissance. Are these festivals a response to the resounding success of iconic events like the Jaipur Literature Festival and the Bangalore Literature Festival? Or do they signify a growing intellectual fervor among urban dwellers, shaping these gatherings into veritable tastemakers? Here with us to address these questions is an eminent panel of speakers. To briefly introduce them, Subodh Shankar is the co-founder of Atagalata, a Bangalore-based independent bookstore with a focus on Indian vernacular writing that is a venue for the arts community. It has been iconic for lovers of art and poetry since its inception 12 years ago. Subodh had been a prominent entrepreneur in IT earlier, and his company, JustVox, was a pioneer in the field of speech recognition and speech synthesis. V. Ravichander was former honorary director of the Bangalore International Centre and part of the core team that organizes the Bangalore Literature Festival and the Bangalore Habba annually. Ravi assists multiple social and cultural initiatives in Bangalore and other cities, including evangelizing the idea of setting up new public spaces. Shiny Anthony is a writer and editor based in Bengaluru. Her novels include Eden Abandoned, The Story of Lilith, Can't, and The Girl Who Couldn't Love. Her anthologies include Boo, Why We Don't Talk, and An Unsuitable Woman. She's the founder of the Bangalore Literature Festival and director of the Bangalore Poetry Festival. Yumna Jija Hari Singh writes poetry, fiction, and children's literature. Her works have received several local awards and have been published in various magazines and platforms, including Brainwave, Amar Chitrakatha's science magazine, and Pratham's Story Weaver. She's a curator and has directed several festivals, including the Rorick Centenary Celebration, Bangalore International Arts Festival 2004, and the Glass House Festival for Poetry. Deepa Rao Acharya, our moderator for today, is a writer, social entrepreneur, and influencer. She has donned various hats as a Times of India journalist, TV and Bollywood scriptwriter, short story writer, and content creator. Her event company, Lit Spirit, is tied up with her foundation, which aims at bringing about social transformation through spiritual awareness. And with that, I'd like to invite all of the speakers on stage. Their detailed bios are on the BIC website and on the festival website. And I'll turn the program over to Deepa Rao Acharya, our moderator.
Hello, everyone. Yes. Okay. Lovely to see all your shiny, bright faces on a Sunday, a holy nonetheless, so thank you for joining us. We have a power-packed panel today, as you can all see. So what we're going to do today is I have a couple of questions specifically for each of you, given your particular spheres of influence, after which we'll throw it open to all of you and then, of course, the audience, okay? But if any of you want to jump right in and also, address a fellow panelist's question, please feel free to dive in, okay?
Get the audience involved earlier because there's more wisdom there on the dais. For sure.
I think a round of applause for that before we begin. So we'll begin with Ravi. Ravi, we've been witnessing, you could almost call it a cultural renaissance of sorts in India of late, Last year alone, there's been such a surge of cultural festivals, especially in the realm of, I would say, poetry and literature. Last year alone, there have been more than 60, bordering 100 such festivals across the country. So my question to you is, where is this coming from, this surge? Is it maybe the resounding success of iconic events like Bangalore Lit Fest, Jaipur Lit Fest, Or is there a growing intellectual fervor, curiosity amongst city dwellers? So what is it? And also, is it a passing, fleeting phase, or is it here to stay? A shift in our country's cultural scape?
So I think it is here to stay. What's causing it, of course, there is a ripple effect. So, even if you take, for example, you mentioned literature. The Jaipur Literature Festival, I think when it started around 2007-8, it barely filled a room half this size. That's how actually it started, year one and year two. There was just a group of friends literally meeting. And then suddenly it took a life of its own to what it has become. Similarly, if you take Bangalore Literature Festival, about which Shiny will talk a lot more, in 2012, I think we had about 5,000 people, and now we have about 30,000. So there's a 6x increase in 12 years. I think what's fueling this interest is a hunger for arts and culture. And there are enough studies which says that as a country's GDP improves and the economic lot improves, it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of interest. There is increasingly greater desire and let's say even surplus money to spend towards the higher order needs like arts and culture. So what you will see is, and as we keep getting more and more prosperous, the incentive to do more in arts and culture events will actually increase over time. So I think partly at one level, it is a function of what happens in the economy. At another level, and as someone who's worked a lot on, let's say, trying to fix cities' hard infrastructure, and I always call the arts and culture as a soft infrastructure, it's a lot easier to actually work on the soft infrastructure because the hard infrastructure are wicked problems to solve: health, garbage, mobility, etc. But arts and culture is a space that where there's a lot of scope for private patronage for public purposes. And we have this Maharaja culture of yore, who were the patrons of arts and culture. And what you're seeing in a certain sense, and I think Bangalore in more ways than one is at the forefront of that kind of activity, where people who have done well in society are giving back by promoting arts and culture. So that also is, for example, Bangalore Lit Fest is an example, which is a community-funded festival. It's not government. So I think all these are causing a certain resurgence, and it is definitely here to stay. If anything, we are constrained by the lack of public spaces to host them. And, even BIC, this building is 5 years old. And even if you take something like LitFest, it's sad that for a public free-to-attend festival, we have to go to a 5-star hotel to be able to put it out for the... Normally, a city should have 8-10 places like the Lalit Ashok where public events can be held, but we don't have it. So we will continue to have this constraint of not having spaces, but there will be a desire to do them, and people will innovate and figure out how to make it happen.
Thanks for the deep dive, and you touched upon a few things which we'll get into, hopefully, in detail further on. So, Shiny, my next question is for you. I like how this has beautifully worked out. We spoke a little bit about Bangalore Lit Fest, something all of us Bangaloreans are really proud of, I must say. So you started in 2012. Flash forward to 2024, 12 years later, you're now, BLF is now the second largest literary conclave in the country.
I think every festival, can you hear me? I think every festival calls itself the second largest.
No, I think this is something most of us would agree upon,
There is this thing, number 2 and trying harder.
I think everyone agrees JLF is right there, and the number 2 slot is divided among about 200 festivals.
That's no mean feat. No. I think Bangalore would take that spot, and I think many of us here would agree on that. And of course, like Ravi mentioned, it's also the largest community-funded literary fest in the country, maybe even in the world, but in the country for sure. So what I want to ask you is, today we've grown to what? Ravi, you mentioned 30,000 participants, close to 300 authors, 180 to 100 sessions, right? Spread over 2 days, touching upon so many topics and, which caters to so many age groups. So what I want to ask you is, over the years, how has the LitFest changed and evolved? You've been a witness to that, And also, has there been a shift in the programming itself, the curation and the programming? And one more thing I think we would all like to know is, does the inclinations, the literary or cultural inclinations of the average Bangalorean affect or inform your choices as a festival curator?
So I think 13 years back when Vikram Sampath got his Motley group together, and I would just go to drink the coffee, but then we did actually pull off the first one. And really, Deepa, I don't think we thought there would be a second one. And then when we had the second one, we never thought there would be a third one. And when we did the third one, so each festival, we always felt like, how are we going to pull this off? And then at the last minute, and that's the excitement. Actually, there's a kind of hysteria that runs through all of us towards the end. And that is actually something quite intoxicating. And I think that keeps us in the business. And, but the other thing is that, all of us, Ravi, Subodh, Shri Krishna, me, we, just before the first festivals, the first day of the festival, just before the first session, I think about 10-15 minutes before that, we just stand and we kind of just stare at the people coming in. And I tell you, we can never stop this festival because the kind of electricity that Bangaloreans bring to BLF, and they put that B into BLF like with so much of vigor and so much of energy. It's just not possible for us to now stop this. It's like a ball now rolling downhill, and it would be very difficult to pull the brakes. But that charge that is just there in the city, and I may be prejudiced, but I really feel this we could pull it off only in this city. I've lived in Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore, perhaps equal number of years in all these three cities, and also Cochin. And I just feel that only in Bangalore will people meet you halfway with such an open heart, warm smile, and happy to see what you're doing. And they come, and all of us are given a lot of suggestions during the festival. People come to us and say, why don't you get this writer? Why don't you get that writer? I just read this book. And we actually have a WhatsApp group where we put these names and we put these writers. And we are also one festival. This is just like a small tidbit. But we don't just call the latest authors, just the authors with the latest books. Because publishers get in touch with you, it's easy to get that list. Right. But we also go by this whole system, where we tell each other which book we liked and get them. And as you're asking me about the curating, see, I challenge any person, Yumna or, Subodh, Ravi, anyone, to have any two festivals which are alike. It's not possible. Even the same organizer, if they put together two festivals, it cannot be the same because you as an organizer come with a different mood. What's happening in the world is very different. What's happening today in the world is so different. We've never seen this before. The last BLF and this coming BLF, the world is changing. So our curation does change according to that. And the writers bring their own synergy into this. And most of all, the people who come for it. And I'm telling you, BLF is completely people run. So the organizers are replaceable. The writers are replaceable. The audience is not. Because they just make BLF.
I think here we have the secret sauce for what makes BLF what it is today, the respect they have for the audience. So thanks for that. My next question would go to Subodh. So Subodh, you're in the happy position of being, a bookstore owner. Of course, Atta Galata is immensely popular in our city. I don't need to introduce that to anybody. Of being, a bookstore owner in a city that's the largest market for books in India. So very exciting indeed. Also, Bangalore, just like the rest of the country, actually, you could say, is home to a large millennial and Gen Z population. And, this is a generation that really prioritizes, I think, immersive cultural experiences over material possessions, and they are hungry for authentic social connections. Unfortunately, a generation where also depression is quite rampant. So they really seek these authentic connections, right? So I feel cultural festivals can play a large role in being a binding factor for them, serving as a kind of a glue. So where do you see these festivals come in really, and what kind of an impact can they have on this generation? Also, how can we engage them more with such festivals?
Thanks. I think you hit a very, very important topic that needs to be discussed, which is, I think as cities become larger, people move into cities. you're surrounded by people, but you're still lonely. And we see a lot of that because, like you suggested, we see a lot of young people come through Atta Galata. One of the things we've been fortunate with running the bookstore, not just as a bookstore, but a place where people come and hang out, people just come and, read or attend events. We see a lot of people come in and, I spend a lot of time, I've had the good fortune to talk to a lot of these people. So loneliness is rampant in the city. And like you said, not just cultural festivals, but any form of a cultural engagement becomes a place where you see a lot of young people today because like Shaini suggested, Bangalore is a city where I think people are happy to step forward halfway and meet you with a smile. And that kind of openness is present when, all of these events happen. And part of it shows, I mean, if you look at today and the number of young people that are running around and volunteering, they're not doing it for the money or because they have nothing better to do Saturday or a Sunday. These young people have 20,000 things they can do on a weekend, and they yet choose to come to these places because I think it gives them a sense of belonging. It gives them a sense of community, and bonds are created from this. Friendships are forged. You see the number of community spaces in Bangalore, like Ravi suggested. Many of them, virtually all of them, are privately run spaces which behave like public spaces. They're privately run spaces which are open to the public, that do not ask you to show an ID to enter. Anybody is welcome to walk in. And I think one of the reasons that you see a large number of community spaces happening is because young people today are happily patronizing these spaces and patronizing it not just by physically being there, but also jumping in with their time and effort when these community organizations and centers are involved in things. I'm just the energy that you see from these people and the commitment with which they jump in shows that they want to belong. They want to be part of these communities and tribes. And especially the ones that have come into the city fairly recently and are yet building roots in the city, they are doing that. And I think this is one of the, most sustainable ways in which young people are actually settling down, putting down roots, fighting their own loneliness and depression, making new connects. And as the number of such opportunities increase, I think just the engagement with these people is also starting, with that age group is also starting to increase.
It's good to know that the engagement has increased over time, actually.
Absolutely.
So now we come to Yumna, one of our lovely organizers. So Yumna, what I want to ask you is, you've been part of Bangalore's, cultural festival, scene, I would say, since 2004, I think. So it's been 2 decades now. So you've actually been a first-hand witness to, how not just the city has grown and evolved, the evolving demographics of our city, but also how the festival scape itself, in response to the city growing, how that has changed over time. So could you, throw some light on that? And also, it's amazing you've been part of different festival scenarios, art, poetry, literature, street expressions, the Rorik Centennial. So that's quite a smorgasbord actually that you've handled. So I think you'll be a good person to tell us more about this.
I feel very much like you're putting me on the spot. I'm like, you have all of these stalwarts. Why are you not asking them how the cityscape has changed over the last 20 years? I think the perspective I bring actually is someone who was here for, so you're referring to the Rorik Centenary in 2004, which is precisely 20 years ago, and I directed that festival, and I feel Bangalore was very different 20 years ago, from even the size of the population, the nature of the people who were in the city. It was a time when the recurring festival, if you recall, used to be Habba, and the Rorik Centenary at that time started with being I'm using this as an example. At that time, we tried to make it kind of a biennale. So the art side took over the public spaces and then the private galleries, and then we went into the open spaces in Kaban Park and Lal Bagh and did performances that were dance, and Bal Bhavan with the sculpture, and theater on, famous painters. And then we said, okay, but what about people who haven't arrived or aren't good enough to make it to one of our master art camps or one of our, young talent art camps? What do we do about that? Because the ethos of Art Mantram is art for everybody, everywhere. That's how we started as a fine arts organization, as Mantram Art Foundation in 1999. And I'm specifically answering your question by saying that one of the things that we decided to do to make it more accessible was we pedestrianized MG Road for the day, put up stalls in what is now Rangoli before the metro came up, and rented them at a pittance to say even people who haven't established themselves can come and show their work and sell their work. And we managed this through CKP. So then we did it again in 2006, and CKP has continued that fantastic idea. And look at Chitrasante today. I mean, it's massive. So for me, the germ of a tiny idea has, and I think I take a lot of pride in that because, Art Mantram completely volunteer run. We all had our own careers. I finished that Rorik Centenary and went back to London and wherever else. But as the city grows, I think we all learn from each other and we all grow with each other. And I come back so many years later and I see a very different Bangalore than the one I left. And so I was very curious to see how does the curation of a festival change when you hold it year to year? Because it's one thing that even though we've held the Hebbar centenary celebration that we did, even though we've had these iconic festivals that Art Mantram has curated, they've really been more one-offs than an ongoing year after year, year after year. And in fact, even Glasshouse, people are saying, why are you calling it Glasshouse? And it's because Glasshouse was born when we were all locked into our COVID situations, and we said Glasshouse is an iconic building and we all feel like hothouse flowers, and we're looking at all these poor migrants who are not protected. So that was the origin of the name, and I am shocked we are at a second edition, and I'm already telling people I don't think there's going to be a third edition. But I think the jump for me is exponential when I look at where we were 20 years ago and where we are today, because it also feels like Bangalore's momentum is continuous now. We're rolling downhill. It's not like you're on a flat surface where you're pushing with so much might. Does that answer your question?
It does, and also I think going by what you and Shiny said, there can definitely be no cookie cutter approach. You have to be very open to the dynamic interplay, between the audiences, the city, and its evolution. So yeah, thank you for that. Back to Ravi now. Ravi, I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate. So a lot of people say that, cultural festivals, not just in Bangalore, but elsewhere as well, they tend to be a little elitist in nature, not maybe really very egalitarian, things like that. So how do you think these festivals can be made more inclusive? Again, there's so many stratas of society in a city like Bangalore. So how do you address all of those different demographics and make it inclusive?
So, actually, it's up to the organizers to make sure that it is inclusive. This charge that the LitFest is elitist, even BIC is elitist, etc., is a common charge, because when people look at who are the people behind it, we are elite. In fact, it's the responsibility of the elite to actually make such centers possible. I think the key thing from an organizer point of view is to make sure that you're making the efforts to be inclusive. In the sense, for example, everything that I've been associated with tends to be free to attend. To me, free to attend is as inclusive as it gets. I mean, from our mind, whether the vegetable vendor wants to come in, she's welcome. She may be still intimidated by the building or by the Hotel Ashok, but she is welcome. So fundamentally, by making it free, you make it inclusive. The other thing,
but does that happen, really?
The vegetable vendor does not come in. Vegetable vendor does not come in. But I think at BIC, at times, the drivers do come in. We tell the drivers, instead of sitting in the car, you come and watch the performance. It's a small start. But more importantly, it's also the other thing, this language thing, Kannada. In fact, this is something that Shiny can talk even more to. BLF has been a festival where the Kannada quotient, in fact, Pratiti helps us do the Kannada curation year on year for the last 3-4 years. We do between 15 to 20 sessions in Kannada. In fact, I remember two literature festivals ago, a guy accosted me and said that this is not inclusive enough, there's not enough Kannada. The only question I asked him, your Kannada festivals, which you do, how much space do you provide for other regional languages and English? Zippo. It's zero. It is a Kannada literature festival or whatever it is. So I said, look, here are people who are making the effort to basically be inclusive in terms of providing bhasha programming and the like. And all you're basically holding us to the ones who are doing it, saying, why is there not more of this? And why is this only, let's say, 15 or 20% of the programming? So you can never please everybody in this. So to me, I think it's between you and the mirror. You got to be clear that what you're trying to do is truly inclusive. You got to keep your eyes and ears open for signals that you're missing. Be ready to listen to others and incorporate that into whatever you're doing. I think anybody who runs these arts and culture festivals or premises, etc., inclusivity, particularly in our current times, where, exclusion is so easy and it is so ordinary every day. You have to make the effort to be inclusive, and there's no substitute for making that effort. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. So now, Shiny, again, please, be very candid with this. So many festivals, but are they all really good? And do we really need so many festivals? And also, what do you feel is really lacking in the literary festival circuit in India?
Okay,
What do you think could be improved?
Do we need as many festivals?
Yes.
I think it's...
Is it is there festival fatigue setting in?
No, it's fine, because I feel every time a new festival is born, some festival may die. And I feel that the ecosystem is kept. And every festival brings something very, very different to the environment. And if I like one festival, I may just be curious about another festival. In the third festival, I may be completely committed. So the number of festivals, because we don't say how many buses and is that too few, we don't need any more buses. We don't say that, because buses are being phased out. They're old, so you get new buses. So I would never say more the merrier. Festivals should really multiply, breed like nobody's business. That's what I would say. What is lacking? Okay, I sometimes feel that I'm not commenting on any other festival, obviously, because I've only been part of two, BLF and the Poetry Festival. I think for me, both in personal life and professional life, the number one word is teamwork. And without that, nothing works. Not in your friendships, not in your professional relationships. So for me, both these festivals have been very safe places where I feel that we as a team come together, volunteers, the curators, the organizers, everyone comes together. And we are very honest and free with each other to say this is not working or this is working, And even in BLF, we have Pratiti, we have Sadhana, we have Shabanti. We have like this huge team. And we welcome anyone who is just happy to come and give us honest opinions.
It just has to be
I
free.
think we should do a show of hands now. All of us are ready to come and give opinions.
It's not just free, I would add honest and sincere, genuine, authentic. That is very much required because, ego really doesn't have a place in, nobody is in it to become someone or you feel like I am someone. That would kill the festival. And I feel both in the BLF and BPF, I don't think we matter. That's why I said we are totally replaceable. So I feel that whole thing about, nobody would know who Ravi is, nobody would know who I am, nobody would know who Shri Krishna is, Subodh is, Lakshmi is. So I think that is very, very required to be able to take that step back so that the thing can grow.
So what do you feel then is lacking, but in,
Lacking, I do feel teamwork could be lacking. If something fails, then I feel that is because there was that whole thing about, I know best. In the literary scene, I would say that we really don't have too many literary prizes and not much money riding on it. We used to have DSE, it's gone. Now we have JCB, and JCB is the only one. When you compare us to the West, okay, we stand accused of being elitist, but we don't have prizes, and we don't have genre-based prizes. We don't have for the best whodunit, for the best ghost story, for the best humor, and in non-fiction also, we have a prize which will be fiction or non-fiction, one book, which would get the prize. So I do feel as a country, we really need to get our prize act together. The other thing is, compared to a lot of other countries, that whole the subsystem of literary agent, editor, publisher, writer, though, at BLF we have LitMart, and now we've started Screenlit, where we connect first-time writers to professionals. But I do feel that we do not really have, it's just coming up. But where we are scoring, where I cannot find fault, we are late, but better late than never, is a translation field. We have finally understood that Indian writing in English is actually just a baby, a toddler, compared to the fact that we've got beautiful literature in all languages. And we just did not have expert or able translators, which is why European literature came to us. We were reading other languages, but our books were not going out. And now I feel that is something that we've caught on to, and we are bridging that gap rapidly.
And how is that happening? If I may ask, how are you
No,
bridging?
it's late.
Oh,
It's
okay.
late, but it's happening. Beautiful translations, no?
No, as in, is Bangalore Lit Fest actively
Bangalore
engaged
Lit
in-
Fest does its own bit. But I'm saying, as I'm looking at the whole picture, as a nation, we've woken up to the fact that we were sitting on a gold mine and we did not know it.
Yes, there's a surge now in...
Deepa, if I can just quickly come in. The country might have 100 literature festivals, but the city only has one, at best two. Similarly, poetry festival. So it's really not too much. It might be fatigue for the authors to have to do the circuit, etc., and they pick and choose. But if you look at it from an individual's perspective of what they're getting exposure to, it's very few. So the aggregate is a bit misleading. The other quick point I just want to mention in terms of challenges in curation, not just LitFest, anybody who does it, we are so polarized right now to try to find the middle ground and be balanced. There's so much of outrage. Whatever you put out, somebody is getting offended. So the big challenge really is to find that common middle ground where you can say that, look, I made the effort to be. So just like inclusive, finding balance and thing is equally critical and getting increasingly difficult. And
We live
whether
in
we
a
like
world
it
of
or not,
cancel
there is
culture.
self-censorship that is happening in the sector. We ourselves are calling out saying this could get us into trouble, better not to go there. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's the reality.
So you feel there's not that much freedom of expression anymore.
You said that, not me. Excuse me. The people are watching.
Okay, with that, we'll move to Subodh again. So, Subodh, my question to you is, the Rajasthan Deputy CM Diya Kumari, she recently made a very powerful statement at JLF. She said that 5 days of JLF do more for tourism in the state of Rajasthan than what the government does throughout the entire year. It's a very powerful thing to say, and she went on record to say that. So, but of course, it's a huge revenue earner, that festival. 3 lakh people, I think, come in, and some, all from all over the world. People plan their trips to India based on JLF dates, and, we all are aware of this. So, so let's talk money, basically, economics. What role do cultural festivals play in boosting local economies? And it would be great if you could also talk specifically about Bangalore.
I think in a city like Bangalore, I don't think the same impact that probably happens for Jaipur happens for a city like Bangalore. Jaipur is a really small city, and the scale of the festival in proportion to the size of the city during, the other 360 days is inordinate, right? In a city like Bangalore, the festivals, there is an economy which is developed around the world of arts and culture. But I think it's still a small contributor in a city like Bangalore. Ravi, please add to this. Jaipur is an outlier in the sense that a small town, sleepy town, 360 days of the year, suddenly for 5 days in a year turns into this massive international jamboree. But leave the outlier alone and just look at the economics of the arts and culture industry. I think there is a small but growing contribution, and I'm leaving films out of it, right? You leave films out of it. And in all of these discussions, you leave your mainstream film industry out of it. If you take the world of literature and fine art and things like that, there's a small but constantly growing economic aspect to it. Yeah, in a city like Bangalore, it's actually quite insignificant. I'd say it's
That's kind
insignificant.
of
Quickly to add,
disheartening to
Jaipur
know.
Lit Fest, I think 90% of the audience is from outside town, while Bangalore, etc., is catering to a local populace. That's a big difference. It's a destination. Like you have destination weddings, that's a destination festival. Even the organizers come from Delhi to organize it and go back to Delhi. So it's really that kind of festival. But it does huge things to the economy. Even if I look Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is the world's, it's become a festival city as branding. In August is the Fringe Festival. The same hotel room, which if it costs you 10K now, it costs you 60K during the festival. So that straight away is an indication of what it is doing to the economy, just doing the Fringe Festival. So the correlation between boost to economy with successful festivals are well known, but they work for, the question to ask is, does Bangalore want 3 lakh more people to come here for 3 days?
Which is a question worth
So that's a
asking. If it
question that
helps,
you need
if
to
it
ask.
helps local vendors.
And with the infrastructure, the public infrastructure available to host these 3 lakh people, we have enough trouble with 30,000 people at the Bangalore Literature Festival, people unable to drive in on the roads and park their cars and,
Yeah.
not even take the free buses that were
The
arranged.
short answer is it can do wonders for the economy.
It
definitely.
can. And I think when we come eventually to unboxing, we'll talk about that as well. But are we? Oh, out of time. Oh, okay. So then one more for Yumna, and I think we'll throw it open to the audience. Okay. So Yumna, festivals have a very transformative part to them, right? And also they inculcate a sense of camaraderie. So have you, in real time, have seen how it's positively impacted cultural festivals, positively impacting individuals and communities? Because at the grassroots level, it makes a difference when we know heartwarming stories about that. Otherwise, it's just like a cultural festival, It's like a big picture scenario.
I'm actually going to flip that and sort of respond to just what was said just now, because I think that there are people whose lives transform because their perspective transforms, right? But that's an internal journey. It's very difficult for me to say that, this person's life transformed in this way by coming to a festival, or to claim that credit, to say that this was a transformational moment. But what I would say, I think, coming to your question about communities, is I think festivals talk to each other, audiences talk to each other, and in that way, there is an evolutionary process that takes place, right? And I think that all individuals, including, I should stop because I want the floor to open at least for a minute. Every person who goes to a festival, according to me, or any event, cultural event, should walk away with one thing different, one new thought. And then I think it's a success, right? And I think to the point that was made earlier, that everybody you put on stage brings their own journey and therefore brings something different. And every audience member who listens is bringing something different. So all of that is transformative in many different ways. And I'll leave it at that because audience question.
Okay. All right. So, by the way, that was very well said. Thoughts can revolutionize the world. So, yeah. So, any questions? Is there someone with a mic over there?
Hi, my name is Sangeeta. Am I audible? Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to certain perspectives that we already got from Subodh. We just got that he felt that more of the younger organizers who are starting are getting to see more people coming in. I'll come from a place where I've been running a theatre group here for the last 50 years, and we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary here very soon. So I would say, to our great joy, we still have plenty of newcomers joining the group every day. That's what Bangalore is doing. And I don't know why and how, but it's happening. So that's one. And Ravi had said that, yes, elitist. And the elite should think of how to make things more inclusive. I'll try to give you one example that in Kolkata, there's a thing called Durga Puja, which happens, which is elite and non-elite and minus elite. Everybody comes in over there. So we will also gradually roll over to that pasture. I know that. It'll happen in Bangalore as well. So nothing to worry or be frightened about. And Shiny had mentioned about self-censorship over there, I felt that, no, I think Yumna said about self-censorship. Oh,
Ravi mentioned it,
So
yes.
over there also, I feel that the organizers have a huge responsibility to be brave all the time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot.
Anyone else with a question? Any questions for the panelists?
I'm Manikandan from Madurai. Thanks for the opportunity. You were talking about inclusive. Uh, uh, Everything, civilization is based on science, engineering, technology. I've seen literally, I was part of the 2 days in Lalit Ashok Hotel. I attend many programs here whenever I get
You come
time.
from Madurai all the time?
No. I've settled here for 1 year. The inclusive. Now you have amalgamated art and poetry, music and poetry, dance and poetry. We have seen it live. And there is science gallery near they are art and science. They have art, science and technology. They have combined. So why literature? Why? Because literature is mostly, it is imagination, emotions, and it relates to that. So whoever is interested in science, engineering, it is realistic. I will repeat what I said in Indian Engineering Congress in Delhi last year, 2 years back. Name one thing that is not connected with engineering technology. The mic you use, the AC, the architecture of this room, everything is engineering technology. The pure science engineering technology will be dry. But why don't you correlate poetry and engineering technology to civilization and add one part of that in a combination of that? I think that will become more inclusive because we are living in anything, transportation.
So you're basically saying inclusive in terms of intersection of arts and
Yeah,
engineering.
yes.
Literature and engineering.
Make
Which
it
we
more-
did last year at the Literature Festival. I don't know if you saw the New Age scanning thing, which was the Servant of Words, where they started digitizing public records. That was an intersection
Yes,
of technology.
I was there. There was in water ecosystem, economy, but direct engineering and technology. If it will attract more students. This year,
We'll keep that in mind and see what we
Thank
can
you.
do.
Thank
Point
you.
well taken.
Thank you, sir. I think we have time for maybe one last question, a quick one.
Thank you to the panel. Thank you to Art Mantram for bringing this conversation to us. I think it's very important. I've spoken to 3 out of these panelists who are on stage today about infrastructure and various kinds of infrastructure in the cultural ecosystem in India, specifically for a project called Festivals from India, which is trying to build a database of cultural festivals in the country, which so far surprisingly hasn't existed, because when you Google for festivals in India, you will only find Holi, Diwali, and so on and so forth. No mention of Bangalore Literature Festival, Bangalore Poetry Festival, and all of the other amazing cultural festivals that we have. I think that speaks to the state of the infrastructure, if you will, of the festival sector, of the cultural ecosystem. I'm keen to understand from anyone in the panel, or maybe perhaps all of you, where do you see this sector in terms of professionalism in the next 10 years, 15 years? We've talked about how the literature of BLF, BPF are very strong community festivals. That, forgive me for saying this, but that comes with a little bit of informality, right? In terms of whether it's employment of the festival staff, volunteers, and so forth, so on and so forth. And I ask this as someone who works as an arts manager in the city and in the country and in the festival sector. Where do you see this going in the next 10 to 15 years? Do you feel like festivals will continue to be community-run, community-led, and therefore perhaps slightly more informal? Do you feel like they should be there? Or do you feel like there is space for it to grow into a more professional, formalized sector for the cultural ecosystem?
Dipti, I'll take that straight away. I think it needs professionalizing. Right now, actually, it's a very informal thing. Even when we are looking for replacements in centers, we are just spreading the word loosely around and then finding someone. Clearly, the sector needs professionalizing, like what you did at Artex, etc. is required on a larger scale. The sector needs to also start paying more. And part of the problem really is, we are in this vicious thing of there's not enough money in the system. You're not able to attract talent, which is good talent. So that also needs to be fixed. But if I take a 5 to 10 year view, I see an increasing professionalization of arts management people running premises and running these festivals. The festival organizers will more likely pass it on to these professionals to run it, and they will focus maybe on fundraising and the overall cover for the festival is the way it'll go. Premises people require, there's a hunger for good talent to really come through. So I see, but what it will require is 1 or 2 entrepreneurs, like we had Artex, but Artex is now closed in the sense of its efforts. That itself tells you something. You need 1 or 2 professional outfits to come and say, I will invest in curriculum and building art professionals in a fully 360-degree way from teaching them to placement. That is really required to give it a particular fillip. And I think Shunya announced an arts management course recently. So you're seeing trends of professional arts management courses being offered to attract people into this sector. So it'll take time, but it requires also some entrepreneur out there to bite, saying there's a business opportunity in building a curriculum and course for arts professionals.
Can I just come in here also very quickly? And I think the second thing that I would add is the flip side of it, where, I think BLF has done a great thing with being crowdfunded. But Art Mantram is the other example where, we're constantly looking for sponsorship, looking for money to run our programs. And it's one of the reasons why it's so fluctuating is because I think there is no systemic support, right? Whether that is a corporate sponsor, whether that is the government, whether it is a city that decides that actually we are willing to pay, for these festivals to occur, whether it is, and therefore I think that becomes a limiting factor as well. And as soon as, look at Glastonbury in 2016, which is the last figures that I looked at a long time ago, tens of millions of pounds are spent, right? And it's a paying festival. And after taxes, they make something like 900,000, right? And all of these places, for us, it's all about accessibility. We're all about free. We're all about more, but if you're not ticketing and you're not funded by somebody, where is the money coming from? None of us are, in Art Mantram, none of us are paying. We're all volunteers, really. And as long as that's the nature of the game, that there isn't money in the system, we are unable to pass it on.
And also, just to quickly add, 3 years ago, we got a chance. There was the biggest philanthropic organization in the world, which was at ITC Gardenia meeting, a whole day meeting on where to deploy money. And 3 of us got 3 minutes each to make a pitch for arts and culture. BIC, Science Gallery, and MAP. We got 3 minutes each to pitch to the biggest philanthropic people in the world, saying why you should fund the arts and culture. And we ended up by basically saying, just give us your change of philanthropy and we'll be okay. And in case you don't want to give it, many of our programs are free, you're welcome to come. That's how we close the whole session. Literally shaming them to say, please do something for arts and culture. But fortunately, with the latest CSR funding rules, etc., there is scope to get more money for arts and culture. So the ecosystem is changing, albeit slowly.
Even with that changing, we go out and raise money for the Bangalore Poetry Festival. It's it's a root canal. It's a self-inflicted root canal every year. But yeah, we've done it for 8 years. And, I think to answer your question, I think it's like Deepa, I think family-run firms turning into professional management is, I think, what every sector essentially gets to. And we might still get there.
There was one, okay. Please go ahead. Do we have time? No. Oh, okay. So could you please make it really quick and then
so
we wrap
this is
up?
about, I was just asking someone, why should it be free to be inclusive, right? So I look at Bombay, for example. There's a lot of open mic communities for poetry, for music, for fine arts in general. And they all have a hierarchy that leads up to the NCPAs and the Shanmukhanandas of the Bombay music scene, right? So nowhere have I ever seen a free program other than at the open mic stage. So as soon as an artist has, established themselves at a certain level, it has to always be a paid audience that comes to them. Because that way it stays sustainable. So my question is inclusivity all about being free?
It is not all about being free, but free serves a purpose. You create new audiences by making the entry free, so that they like it enough to go and pay for it elsewhere. So I think the people who are in arts and culture want people to pay for arts and culture. But free has a role in expanding audiences, exposing them to new art forms. So they say, hey, this is good enough, next time around I'll pay. If it's paid from the thing, then you get the same circle coming back for it. So that's where free fits in. But the artists must be paid for. So even though you may be free to the public, you got to find ways to pay the artist. Nobody is expecting the artist to perform free. So that's the distinction.
Okay, I think we'll wrap up. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being such an engaged audience. Thanks a lot.
Big thank you to Ravi, Shaini, Deepa, Subodh, and Yumna. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, and we look forward to the next round of festivals that they all are curating.